This review is made possible by Will Stonehouse and his Patreon pledge. If you have a movie, TV show, or video game that you want me to review, or if you just want to support me, then consider going to my Patreon page and making a pledge. Thank you for watching. This is the story of a man named Phil. Or rather, Phil trying to muster up what he could possibly write for his review of the Stanley Parable. You see, for a major extent of his life, Phil had always been a console gamer, only dipping his toes into PC gaming every now and then. He had remembered playing Descent on the family compact Presario running on Windows 95. He was essentially dragged into playing Diablo 2 with his brother during middle school, and he, as well as the rest of his family, as well as the rest of the majority of families living in the First World, became enraptured by the phenomenon known as The Sims back in the early 2000s. Other than that, Phil never really delved deep into the world of PC gaming, preferring to retreat to his room and play the original PlayStation and GameCube. He had recently conceded that PC gaming was, of course, objectively better than the vast majority of console experiences, but he didn't really care that much to begin with. He enjoyed sitting on a comfortable couch, laid back, controller in hand, not having to worry about walking the tightrope about adjusting specs, sparing no expense in getting the definitive experience. None of that mattered to Phil. As long as the game played well, he was content. It is also worth noting that for the past 8 years, Phil owned a Mac. I know that what you're seeing right now is making the PC gaming crowd want to vomit in their mouths, but the main reason Phil owns a Mac was because he took a pre-college course in Final Cut Pro 7 back in high school, and he instantly fell in love with the software, as well as the interface that Macs had at the time, and it was enough for him to purchase a MacBook Pro for his graduation gift, and he's been using Final Cut Pro 7 even to this day. Which leads us into Phil's current predicament. Due to technical limitations, he insisted that on his Patreon-requested video game reviews, console games would be the only option. Macs were certainly capable of playing games, but they weren't the preferred platform, since Apple was against upgrading or modifying any of their products, but I'm getting off track here. Phil was assured that his MacBook could handle running the Stanley Parable at nominal settings, so he agreed to do it, and in the following morning, Phil got up from the left side of his bed, did some stretches, put on his beloved black hoodie, sat at his desk, and started playing the game. Phil had known prior to the review that the Stanley Parable was part of a genre that he had never touched before, a walking simulator, despite the fact that there have been numerous titles in the last few years that have garnered critical acclaim, such as Gone Home, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Believe it or not, it was the very first game he had played in the first person with a keyboard and mouse layout, so naturally, because he's a man-child at heart, he did this first. After he got that out of his system, he started to play the game properly. The Stanley Parable was about, of course, a man named Stanley, content with the mundanity of his everyday life, but one day everyone had vanished without a trace, and it was up to Stanley to figure out what was going on, all the while following the instructions of the narrator, who had a deep, gentlemanly, and unmistakably British voice.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Phil did, however, take the time to soak in the atmosphere of the deliberately bland and monochromatic office setting that fittingly coincided with Stanley's life, which was built purely by narrative exposition. He discovered that there were several jokes plastered into the background, especially in the meeting room, which elicited a few chuckles. Although the narrator strangely caught wind of this, and let us know that Phil was lollygagging around.
Stanley stood for a long time in one spot. It's part of a game. He likes to see how long he can go without dying. So far, he's doing excellent. And if he just stays right where he is, I'm sure he'll keep up that good momentum. Let's observe the genius at work.
So Phil resumed on his path that was laid out before him, except for finding out that he could open up a broom closet and go in there for no apparent reason other than the narrator to say that he was doing absolutely nothing. Phil continued into Stanley's boss's office, entered in a code that was humorously hidden within the narration, descended into a secret underground layer, discovered the truth behind the disappearance of his co-workers, and the mundanity of his life, promptly put an end to it, and that was it. Phil had beaten the game. Was that it? Phil thought. His question was answered when the achievement popped detailing that he had indeed gotten to the end of the Stanley Parable. This couldn't be it, Phil speculated. He saw the praise that the game had received before booting it up, how it was incredibly funny, and claims that it was a breath of fresh air in terms of video game storytelling. Perhaps there was something he missed, a mechanic he may not have picked up on. He slept on that idea for a while, and it suddenly hit him. What if I don't do what the narrator says? The following morning, Phil exited from the left side of his bed. Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. But he did in fact put on his favorite black hoodie, or perhaps it was too smelly from wear and he decided to go with a t-shirt of his favorite band. He got a Coke Zero from the fridge. Or so he wanted to have one, but he figured enough was enough and he needed to lose some weight. He plopped himself on the desk and started the Stanley Parable once again. This time, when he got to the two doors, he went to the door on his right, instead of the left like the narrator stated. Indeed, there was a new path that was laid out before Phil, and the narrator made a snide comment about it, evoking a chuckle. It was at that moment that Phil realized what this game was about, and that revelation opened up a window of possibility. He continued on his deviation, wondering what else would happen by not adhering to the conventional narrative. What he discovered was hilarious, to say the least. Despite the extremely short length of the actual game, the Stanley Parable featured 18 different endings, a lot of which are extremely funny and or totally messes with your head. Some involved falling to your death, some involved manually restarting the game, and there are even some endings that can be reached literally within seconds of starting the game. Some endings take more thought to obtain than others. Who would have initially thought to go into Stanley's boss's office, immediately exit before the doors close, go all the way back to the beginning, to find that there's a new door that had opened, leading to an escape pod. There's even an ending that involves opening the game's console feed and inputting a command into the game's code. Phil contemplated addressing each of the game's endings in detail. He thought about it long and hard, whether or not to discuss it in his video, potentially spoiling the game to the uninitiated. In the end, he decided not to, because this was a case in storytelling where the destination was just as important as the journey, despite the fact that some endings are being shown to you on screen right now, and I literally just told you how to reach several of them. As Phil continued to play and enjoyed more and more of it each time he went through, a troubling feeling suddenly creeped into his mind. He had no idea what to write about in his review. How could he? Here he was playing a video game that was boiled down to absolute simplicity. Go from point A to point B, click a button, open and close the occasional door, and you win! He was going to recommend the game in the end and had already decided not to discuss the game in great detail as to not to spoil it for any audience member pondering whether or not to buy it as a result of watching this review. Even though the game was released in 2013, it has made the rounds of the top brass of YouTube's gaming conglomerate, therefore making Phil's input of the game ultimately insignificant. For hours, Phil paced around his apartment, frantically thinking of ways to make his review of the Stanley Parable stand out among the rest. Perhaps he could go the DSP route and show footage of him being absolutely horrible at the game and claim that it's badly designed, but that would be a lie. He pondered about giving the game an absolute thrashing in hopes of gaining views, but again, that would be dishonest. In fact, the only negatives he could think about the game was that in certain instances, it becomes the very thing it makes fun of, and that the price of $15 seems a little steep for something that can be completed 100% in just a few hours. Of course, the thought had occurred to him that his feelings for the game were entirely subjective. He was aware that even though he was open to the ideas of games like the Stanley Parable, others would simply not understand the appeal. Regardless of all the quirks and unique storytelling perspectives games in that genre could provide, Phil knew which side he was on, but decided to open up both sides of the debate in the comments section, even though that sounded like a truly awful idea. Phil considered the idea of reiterating the announcement of the intention of investing in a gaming PC in the future, especially with the Stanley Parable stoking the flames of that desire. Even though that statement was heartfelt, he also knew that as a writer it's not a good idea to announce intentions where no progress of fulfilling said intention was made, so he scrapped that idea, and he was back at square one. What can I do? What can I do? Uttered Phil in his head as he stared into the blank screen with the cursor blinking in and out of existence. The Stanley Parable was one of the funniest, most unique games he had ever played, but the words to express that feelings just wouldn't come to him. He wanted to break conventions in reviewing the game just as it did with the game itself, and how it not only extends to video games, but it could possibly make you question your role in life in general. Is life really just chaos, and we can either go to the conventional route and hopefully attain a sense of satisfaction, or do our own thing and see how far the ripples go? It was a question that manifested in Phil's thought during and after he played the game, but he was also aware that he wasn't alone in this thought and concluded that people smarter and more intellectually profound than him can do a better job reading and explaining between the Stanley Parable's lines. So again, he found himself at the beginning. It was here where the feeling of hopelessness crept up on Phil. Could he really do the game justice? If he couldn't make a decent commentary about a commentary, then perhaps he was indeed the failed writer he had always feared of becoming. He sat there, alone, letting the dread set in. This was it. The Stanley Parable had finally trumped him. Wait, what's this? Well, it seems that Phil has had a Eureka moment. Well, that's not what I had planned out. Not yet, at least. I had ideas of some wide shots of Phil on the road, and because YouTube loves her, splice in some shots of Muffin being adorable accompanied by my nihilistic ramblings. But no! Phil had to go on and actually have an idea come to him, and with the way he's typing, it seems that it struck him pretty hard and wants to get it on the page as quick as possible. What are you going to do, Phil? Just say to hell with it and repeat points of the game that have already been stated? Repeat the same backstory that it was originally a Half-Life mod? Because that's totally original. And the PC gaming crowd totally hasn't heard that story before. Of course, with you being PMRants, you're probably going to throw in a lot of self-deprecation jokes. A poop joke or two, because you haven't run the Crohn's disease aspect into the ground just yet. Maybe do a bit where you're making fun of the narrator in the meta, referring to yourself in the third person in a terrible British accent. Hell, you could do the entire review on that gimmick alone. Oh god, that's what you're going to do, isn't it? Fine then, go through with your vain attempt to be meta. Ride on the backs of people more talented than you. You're no worse than Keemstar! Oh. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. It was just in a fit of rage, you knew that. Yes, the more I'm thinking about it, the more the aspect of this review not having a fourth wall could work. Yes, I mean you did enjoy the Stanley Parable a great deal and highly recommend it. So why not? You're not ripping it off. You're paying tribute to it with this narration shtick. People online will say otherwise, but hey, that hasn't stopped you before. Oh good, I see that you've finished the script. Well, I guess I'll be quiet now. Seeing as you're about to start your voiceover, I honestly can't wait to see what you've written, because that's what the Stanley Parable does best of all. It creates discussion with people who have never played it, people who have played through it 100 times, people who almost never played PC games until this point, and people who claim to be of the PC master rate. Oh, you're starting. Thank you for watching PMRants' review of the Stanley Parable. And Phil would like to give an especially big thank you to Sean Campbell, Sam Peters, Connor Pierce, William Fletcher, Kestar24, Nicholas Blackman, Q-Player, Jackson Smith, Mitch Jackson, Jack Gore, Ethan Parker, Bond Laniers, Mario Marquin, Rodolfo De Lara, Ramona Viking Hansen, Cynical Carlos, and Michael Groot. And once again, this review wouldn't have been possible without Will Stonehouse and his Patreon pledge. He was even kind enough to send the game as a gift through Steam. If you have a video game that you want Phil to review, then consider going to his Patreon pledge. And here is a Steam ID in case if you want to gift him some games. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned because the end of the year is coming up, which means his year-end review of films of that year is coming up soon, plus he has a whole lot of other unscripted videos that he wants to make, so I hope you're all excited for that. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.